January 986 AD, Northern Iceland, past midnight. A Norse longhouse, 15 people huddled beneath wool and fur. Outside, -40 and dropping. Inside, something is wrong. The fire has shrunk to a thin line of fading orange buried in ash. The hearthstones are going cold. The room's air tightens degree by degree. Near the back wall, a grandmother shivers in her sleep. A child burrows deeper against his mother. Nobody stirs. If no one wakes up to feed those coals in the next few minutes, this Viking home crosses a line it simply cannot come back from. This video explores why sleeping straight through the night was never an option in the Viking world. We look at how they engineered fire, food, bedding, and their own bodies into a layered winter survival system. Each piece relying completely on the others. And one detail, why they stripped off their warmest winter clothing before getting into bed, goes against every instinct. Every Norseman who survived a brutal northern winter knew exactly which hours were the most deadly. Not the evening, when the fire still burned hot. Not midnight, when someone was usually still awake. The real threat hits between 3 and 5 in the morning. Modern science confirms why. This is when the outside air hits absolute bottom. And it is also when the human body hits the circadian trough. Core temperature drops and your heart rate slows down. Metabolic heat production falls to its weakest point. 2 biological clocks flatlining at the exact same hour. Mountain rescue teams across Scandinavia know this deadly window well. Most cold exposure casualties happen right here, between 3 and 5 in the morning. Now, picture a Norse settlement during those hours. The hearth has been burning since morning, but a fire will not maintain itself. Coals lose heat, ash chokes the embers. Without human intervention, the room drifts toward freezing right as those 2 clocks converge. And here is the second major threat. Fire in a longhouse meant warmth, but it also meant extreme danger. Dry straw bedding, wool blankets, open animal fat, heavy timber frames. An untended hearth might die. Or it could throw a stray spark. The very structure keeping a family alive could turn into a death trap in minutes. As covered in our earlier video, the longhouse building itself was a massive thermal achievement. Thick turf walls storing heat, livestock breathing warmth into the shared living space. A thick smoke layer trapped beneath the roof acting like an invisible blanket. But all of that only fought off average cold, the real danger zone between midnight and dawn. When the fire choked out and bodies cooled down was a problem architecture alone could not fix. The Norse knew this, and they left nothing to chance. Every single layer of their night, the fire, the bed, the evening meal, their sleeping habits, was a highly calculated answer to those few brutal hours when everything worked against them. At the center of every longhouse sat the hearth, built not for looks but for pure endurance, a long, shallow, stone-lined pit, sometimes stretching 3 meters or more, packed with dense rocks chosen for one specific trait, the ability to absorb heat slowly and release it even slower. During the day, the flames burned openly, people cooked meals, wet wool clothing dried out, tools were repaired by the warmth, but the real Viking engineering happened at night. As the household got ready for sleep, the fire was carefully reduced, not put out but managed. The technique is called banking. Glowing coals were scraped together into a tight cluster, then buried under a thick layer of ash. Ash acts as a powerful insulator. It slowed the heat escaping from the coals, stretching their lifespan from mere minutes into hours. A properly banked fire held viable embers through the whole night. Ready to be uncovered, fed with dry kindling, and sparked back to life just before dawn. The surrounding hearthstones handled the rest. Heavy rocks that spent 12 hours soaking up energy from the fire now became slow-release thermal radiators, long after the visible flames died out. Those stones pushed warmth out into the room quietly and steadily for hours, but here is the detail most history books skip. Someone had to manage this. A banked hearth is never a guaranteed fire. Coals shift around, ash layers crack open. A freezing draft from the door accelerates cooling in minutes. If nobody checked, nobody adjusted the pile, or nobody fed a chunk of dried peat into the embers at the exact right second, the fire died. Once a hearth goes completely cold in the dead of an Arctic winter night, relighting it with hand tools in pitch blackness is pure desperation. Did they use formal fire watches, like sailors on a ship? Or did the job fall to whoever slept the lightest, the old, the restless, the anxious ones? The Norse sagas do not say for sure. Some researchers point to strict Viking household ranks and argue it was assigned duty. Others view it as an informal, flexible system. The truth probably sits somewhere in the middle, but what is absolutely certain is that someone stayed awake during those dark hours. The fire demanded it, the entire family depended on it. Just think about this. Today, your house has a thermostat that perfectly adjusts itself while you are asleep. The Viking thermostat was a man sitting in pitch darkness, closely watching the color of the coals, judging by feel if the room was holding heat or freezing. Same function, 1,000 years apart. Modern heating engineers might call this a manually operated thermal regulation system with biological sensing and variable fuel input. The Vikings just called it Tuesday night. And here is the core connection to everything else. That night watcher was not just guarding a fire, he was protecting the entire winter survival system. The bedding, the huddled bodies, the food energy slowly burning inside every sleeping person. Because every single layer was engineered to work together. Pull one piece out, and the others simply could not compensate. Starting straight from the surface, they slept on. A Viking bed was never just a piece of furniture. The Norse bed was a thermal device. Every layer served a strict physical purpose. Take the position. Families slept on raised wooden platforms called set, built straight into the Longhouse walls. At the Stang farmstead in southern Iceland, buried by volcanic ash in 1104 AD and uncovered in the 1930s, these survival platforms remain clearly visible. Built 40 to 60 centimeters off the ground, that height had zero to do with comfort. Cold air is dense, so it sinks. Inside a Viking longhouse with a floor-level hearth, the absolute coldest air always pools in that bottom 30 centimeters. Sleeping on the dirt meant freezing in the coldest layer of the room. Lifting the bed up away from the floor was the simplest. Smartest thermal engineering moved the Norse made indoors. Then came the first insulation layer. They packed the platform loosely with dried straw, rushes, or pine branches. They did not care about softness, they wanted trapped air, thousands of tiny dead space pockets, acting as miniature barriers to block body heat from leaking into the cold timber. Over the straw, they layered heavy animal hides. Reindeer fur became the ultimate survival material across the Norse world. Every single reindeer hair is a hollow tube filled with air. Millions of microscopic insulation chambers wrapped right against the sleeper. Modern thermal testing proves that reindeer hide beats out most modern synthetic insulation at the exact same thickness. Vikings lacked a fancy word for thermal resistance. They had something better, hundreds of winters teaching them exactly what kept a human alive. Next came wool blankets, dense, heavy, and packed with lanolin. As covered in Part 1, Norse wool blocks moisture and locks in heat, even wet. Think of this as the wind and vapor barrier, the outer shell of their sleeping system. Now for the layer that still stuns historians. The famous Oseberg ship burial, dated to 834 AD, held the remains of 2 elite women. Mixed in with their gear, over 31 kilograms of down feathers. For context, a premium modern duvet takes about 1 kilogram of down. That Viking ship held enough to stuff 31. Feathers were not luxury decor. This was cold weather survival tech, proving how intensely the Norse studied the science of staying warm, yet some families engineered even further. At Stang and similar Icelandic digs, archaeologists uncovered enclosed box beds. They built small wooden cabinets right into the sleeping platform, complete with doors. Pull that door shut and you engineer a microclimate. Radiating body heat could crank the interior 10 degrees higher than the freezing longhouse. Anyone who camps in the cold knows this drill. A sleeping pad stops ground conduction. A heavy bag provides insulation and a bivy sack blocks wind, exact same physics. The Norse arrived at the identical survival system a full 1,000 years earlier, but the greatest bed on earth cannot spark heat, it only traps what exists. And the most powerful thermal engine in a Norse longhouse was never the central fire, it was the human bodies inside. In Viking culture, sleeping by yourself was not a choice, it was a fatal weakness. The thermal math is simple. A resting human cranks out about 80 watts of thermal energy. Do absolutely nothing, and you still radiate heat like a low-gear space heater. Now stick 2 people together beneath heavy blankets inside a wooden box. 160 watts sealed under wool, fur, and down. wind blocked, moisture controlled. The air inside that shared bed could hover 15 degrees above the freezing room. That right there separates a bad night from hypothermia. The Norse hacked this system. Whole families slept side by side on one platform, and the seating chart was pure strategy. Kids and old folks, the ones fastest to freeze, got the center spot where the core heat pooled. Strong adults took the dangerous outer edges, eating the freezing drafts bleeding through the timber walls. Every single person gave warmth and everyone survived. As shown in Part 1, Norse sailors used the exact same logic out on the ocean. Two men shared sealed leather sleeping sacks called hearth. They swapped with the guard watch so the bag stayed hot. On land, the scale grew. The engineering logic stayed the same. Picture zipping up a sleeping bag on a freezing winter night. That slow fade from shivering until your body heat takes over the space. A Norse household ran that exact same thermal process every single night for 6 months straight. Got a crazy cold weather survival story of your own? Drop it in the comments. Now here is the detail that sounds completely wrong. Before getting into bed, Vikings stripped off their heavy outer gear. Wool tunics, cloaks, thick leggings. If they wore it outside, it came off. They slept in thin, dry linen undershirts. Stripping down sounds reckless in winter, but it was genius. Daily clothing sucked up sweat, snow, and dampness. Damp fabric against bare skin stops insulating and starts conducting. It drains heat straight from your core way faster than cold air ever could. Thin, dry linen let body heat push freely into the shared bed system, rather than burning energy drying out cold, wet wool. The Norse figured this out. Dry and light beneath heavy furs beats, sweating in thick layers every single time. Military winter survival training teaches that exact identical rule today, but everything we just covered works from the outside in. Walls holding back the draft, furs trapping the heat, humans sharing it. Yet the Norse engineered one final layer from the inside out. The dinner table in a Viking longhouse was not about snacking, it was a fuel strategy. Eating heavy fat and protein triggers a reaction. Your body creates heat during digestion. Science calls this diet-induced thermogenesis. Carbs burn hot and crash fast. Fat fuels you all night. Norse winter survival diets relied heavily on fat. Butter went into absolutely everything. Air-dried fish packed with protein and omega-3 fatty acids. Thick bone broth simmering over the hearth for hours, loaded with essential minerals and animal grease. Skyr, a dense, cold, fermented dairy staple surviving months without rotting. A hot dinner spiked core body temperature right away. Fat and protein locked that heat in. The human body turned into a biological furnace, pushing out warmth long after finishing that final bowl. Today, a dietary expert will warn you that slamming a heavy, grease-filled meal right before bed is a terrible idea. A Viking, facing -30-degree winds outside and a fire that might die by midnight, would strongly disagree with that advice. Very strongly. Going to sleep starving during a medieval Scandinavian winter wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a one-way ticket to dropping core heat faster than heavy wool blankets could trap it. Feeding the clan wasn't a separate chore from keeping them from freezing. They were the exact same thing. Every single calorie served up was fuel the body weaponized against the freezing dark, which brings us to one final layer. And no Norsemen would have even bothered talking about this because it was automatic, like breathing. Back in 2001, historian Roger Eckerch exposed an old survival habit that had been sitting right in front of us. After 16 years digging through 500 historical records, he spotted a clear pattern. Before electric lights rewired human habits, pre-industrial Europeans never slept in one solid block. They slept in 2 shifts, a first sleep just after sundown, a natural waking hour near midnight, and a second sleep pushing through till dawn. Vikings did this automatically, and it was a masterpiece of cold weather survival. Waking up at midnight wasn't annoying. It gave them a crucial window to inspect the hearth, shift the hot coals, check on the livestock, and quietly secure the longhouse. Their bodies naturally woke up as if hardwired because they were. In the 1990s, sleep expert Thomas Weyer proved this at the National Institute of Mental Health. Subjects, locked in 14 hours of total dark every night, slipped right back into that 2-phase sleep within weeks. No training, no outside influence, just raw human biology. Your brain still holds that rhythm, if you snap awake at 2 or 3 a.m. Lying quietly in the pitch black before drifting off again, you aren't an insomniac. You're feeling the echo of an ancient survival instinct older than written history. The exact instinct that kept a Viking family's hearth burning, their livestock alive, and their home secure through the deadliest, freezing hours on Earth. So here is what medieval Norse nighttime engineering actually looked like put all together: a hearth packed with ash, baking heat into river stones, bleeding warmth out hour by hour, sleeping platforms stacked with straw, thick furs, heavy wool, and down. Bodies huddled tight, the youngest sleeping exactly where the heat pooled, bellies packed with animal fat burning slow all night long. And tying it together, a natural clock of waking up and watching the flames when the frost hit its hardest. None of these systems worked solo. Take away the hearth, the bedding fails. Drop the heavy calories, your core freezes instantly. Lose the midnight fire watcher, the coals die and everything collapses, every piece engineered to support the rest. Pop culture shows Vikings thriving in daylight. Summer raids, voyages, loud combat, but 6 months out of the year, the real test hit after dark. And they didn't just tough it out, they engineered a solution, quiet, layered, and surgically precise. If you want more history that flips how you view the past, focusing on clever survival systems instead of kings and battles, stick around. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Picture a Norse longhouse in January, coals glowing dull red under a blanket of ash, 15 people breathing slow beneath heavy wool and bare fur. Outside, freezing wind hammers against turf walls 2 meters thick, dead quiet inside, except for massive oak timbers groaning against the cold. Deep in the pitch black, someone opens their eyes, sits up, and reaches for the hearth. The fire survives one more night.